On the lonely mud-soaked roads of the Middle Ages, one place promised warmth, food and shelter, the medieval inn, but behind the flicker of its firelight lay a world of risk, thieves lurking in the shadows, strangers with hidden motives, and dangers that could strike before dawn. Step inside the smoky common room, hear the clink of mugs and the whispers of travelers, and uncover the untold truth of life on the road in medieval Europe, where every night could mean safety, peril. If you love exploring histories, forgotten crossroads, hit like, tap subscribe, and let boring history for sleep take you deeper into the past, one story at a time. Picture yourself on the muddy road between two distant medieval towns. Dusk settles over the fields and forests, the last of the sun's light filtering through the trees. You are tired, cold, and footsore. The thought of continuing into the night is unthinkable. Ahead, a faint glow appears, then the welcome sight of a low-timbered building inn. For centuries, such places have been both havens for the weary traveler and sites of quiet uncertainty. A medieval inn is rarely a grand affair. The most common are roadside hostels, sometimes nothing more than a wattle-and-daub cottage, with a sign creaking on rusty hinges, perhaps showing a stag, a boot, or a red lion. The inn is a private business, not a public institution, and its quality varies wildly. You step inside, ducking beneath the low eaves and into a common room already full of the smells of wood smoke, ale, and roasting meat. The innkeeper greets you, sometimes friendly, sometimes wary, always sizing up your purse and your intentions. For most guests, there is a rough bench by the fire, a mug of thin ale, and, if the kitchen is generous, a stew made from yesterday's leftovers. Accommodations are equally humble, a straw mattress in the loft, or a place to spread your cloak on the floor. Private rooms are a rare luxury, reserved for merchants or wealthy travelers. The inn is both a hub of local news and a crossroad for strangers. Carters, peddlers, messengers, and pilgrims rub shoulders, sharing stories, warnings, and rumors. Sometimes an official letter is read aloud, or a traveling musician plays for a few coins, but more often the evening is filled with the quiet talk of routes and prices, or the drowsy silence of exhaustion. The walls are thin. You hear every cough, snore, and argument from the next room. Safety is always uncertain. The inn stands outside the legal protection of the town walls, in the liminal space between here and there. Thieves and highwaymen know that travelers must stop. Sometimes they lurk in the shadows beyond the lamplight, waiting for a careless guest to wander outside. Inside, too, theft is common. Boots, purses, even food can disappear overnight. Some innkeepers are in league with local bandits, while others try their best to keep peace, locking doors and setting dogs on watch. Cleanliness is modest at best. Lice and fleas are constant companions. The bedding is rarely changed, and the straw is musty from months of use. Washing is a luxury, perhaps a basin of cold water in the yard, or, if you are lucky, a wooden tub by the kitchen. The common room is drafty. Smoke seeps into every corner, and in winter, the only warmth comes from the crowded fire. Yet, for most, this is the safest and most comfortable option on the road. Meals are simple, but nourishing after a hard day's travel. Bread, cheese, salted fish, and if luck allows, roast fowl or rabbit. Ale is weak but plentiful, and sometimes a cup of stronger spirits is served to merchants or guests with deeper pockets. The innkeeper's wife and children serve food, tend to animals in the stable, and clean as best they can between waves of guests stocked in the stables. Horses and mules are fed and watered, their tack hung to dry. Stable boys sleep among the animals, ready to watch for thieves or tend to a lame hoof. Caravans crowd the yard, peddlers count their wares, and pilgrims mend their shoes by lantern light. Every guest has a story, and every bed holds the marks of those who came before. But what happens when trouble comes in the night of fire, a brawl, or the arrival of suspicious strangers? How does the innkeeper maintain order and trust, and what unspoken rules govern the delicate balance between refuge and risk within these humble walls? Night falls fully, and the inn takes on a new character. Shadows pool in the corners of the common room. The chatter of guests subsides to a low murmur. The innkeeper, always watchful, moves among the tables, extinguishing some candles to save precious wax and keeping an eye out for trouble. For every night spent in comfort, there are as many stories of misfortune, loss, or quiet fear. Inns are crossroads, and that means the world's uncertainties pass through their doors. Travelers bring news of war, famine, or bandit raids on distant roads, but they also bring their own troubles. A merchant arrives late, visibly anxious, and insists on storing his strongbox behind the bar. A group of armed men, mud-splattered and short on coin, demand credit for food and ale. The innkeeper, practiced in reading faces, must weigh every risk. Turn away the wrong guest, and you risk their anger. Admit them, and you might invite disaster. Sometimes trouble is small. A quarrel breaks out over spilled ale or a game of dice. Harsh words are exchanged, and the innkeeper or his son intervenes, separating the men before fists or knives appear. In other cases, the danger is quiet, or a sly hand slips into a sleeping traveler's purse, or a sack of goods goes missing from the stable. Most disputes are handled quietly, without calling the law, for travelers know that to make enemies on the road is a poor investment. At other times, disaster comes unbidden. A fire breaks out, a lamp overturned, a cooking pot left unattended. The alarm is raised, and everyone rushes to the yard. The innkeeper shouting orders as water is drawn from the well and buckets are passed hand to hand. The threat is real. Many inns have burned to the ground, their stories lost in smoke and confusion. Sometimes the guests return to find their belongings safe. Sometimes all is gone. Suspicion is a part of every night. Guests keep their boots close and their purses under their heads. Merchants may hire guards or form sleeping shifts to watch over wagons in the yard. The innkeeper, too, locks away his valuables, knowing that sometimes it is not the travelers, but the staff or even family members who take advantage of a moment's distraction. In some notorious inns, darker rumors linger of guests who vanish in the night, of cellars with hidden traps, of inns that are little more than fronts for highwaymen. These tales, told in whispers, are often exaggerations, but the sense of risk is real. Hospitality is still the guiding principle. Even the poorest guest is offered bread and a place to sleep, and in harsh weather, no one is turned away if there is space. Local customs dictate that the innkeeper ask after your needs, offer a candle, and on rare occasion fetch the priest if a guest falls ill or dies in the night. Some inns display letters of safe conduct from local lords or guilds, signaling that their house is under protection, and any harm done to a guest is an offense against more than just the proprietor. The rules of the road become the rules of the house. Quiet hours are kept, so travelers may sleep and rise early. The stables are locked at night, the doors barred against the wind and unwanted company. The innkeeper walks the perimeter before bed, checking that shutters are secure and lanterns doused. A good reputation is everything. A safe and attracts custom. While tales of theft or danger can ruin business in a single season, life continues outside the common room. Stable boys swap stories as they groom the animals. The innkeeper's wife boils herbs for the sick. A minstrel tunes a battered lute, hoping for coins. Pilgrims rise to pray at dawn. Merchants tally their wares, and peddlers haggle for space on the next caravan. The inn is both a refuge and a node in the ever-moving network of medieval traveler, place where the world comes together, if only for a night. But what becomes of these inns over generations? How do they adapt to new laws, new roads, and the rise of larger towns and cities? Do any endure as the centuries pass? Or do they fade, like the footprints of countless travelers on the road? Time moves slowly in the medieval world, but even the most dependable roadside inn is not immune to its passage. What was once a sturdy refuge may, over generations, become a memory. Its walls crumbled, its sign faded, its stories lingering only in the recollections of travelers and the faded ink of old accounts. As towns and trade routes shift, some inns find themselves thriving while others slowly fall into disuse. New roads, paved or widened by the order of local lords or enterprising merchants, may divert traffic away from once busy crossroads. An inn that once heard the tread of pilgrims and peddlers every evening can, within a decade, find its rooms echoing empty, its yard overgrown. In such places, the innkeeper adapts, turning to farming, brewing, or other crafts to survive, or, sometimes, simply abandoning the business to seek fortune elsewhere. Yet many inns endure by evolving. The simple straw bedding of earlier centuries gives way to raised platforms, shared bunks, or, in more prosperous towns, separate chambers for those who can pay. In growing market centers, inns expand, adding a second floor, stables for more animals, or even a small taproom for local gatherings. Some establish a reputation for fine food, or become known for hosting important travelers, ambassadors, bishops, or even royalty. In time, a handful are granted official charters, their rights and duties recognized by town councils or monarchs. The inn becomes the hostelry, the tavern, or the coaching house, woven into the fabric of the town. Legal changes shape the fate of the inn as well. By the late Middle Ages, towns and guilds introduced new regulations and must keep records of guests, report suspicious activity, and meet minimum standards of cleanliness and safety. These rules help protect travelers, but also make life more difficult for smaller, family-run inns, some of which disappear or are absorbed by larger businesses. Culturally, the medieval inn leaves a lasting mark. The customs of hospitality, the etiquette of shared space, and the quiet understanding that all travelers are vulnerable far from home. These traditions echo through centuries. Later generations will develop new forms of lodging, posting houses, guest houses, and, eventually, the modern hotel. But the spirit of the inn endures in ways both subtle and significant. In some places, the old inn building survives, its timber beams dark with age, its stone hearth cold but intact. Historians and travelers alike peer at faded graffiti on the walls, or read the notches on ancient doorframes, tracing the shadows of those who sheltered there. Archaeologists find broken pottery, iron keys, or the remains of stables, piecing together the rhythms of life from what was left behind. Occasionally, an inn is restored and repurposed, a public house, a private home, or even a small museum, where stories of the past are told anew to curious visitors. For every famous traveler who found rest at a renowned inn, there are countless others whose names are forgotten, pilgrims, merchants, farmers, soldiers, their lives intersecting for a brief moment in the glow of a smoky fire. The walls heard confessions, bargains, prayers, and laughter. In the ordinary rituals of bread and ale, of care and caution, a shared humanity is preserved. So, as you prepare for sleep, imagine a silent night in a humble inn, the embers dying low, a gentle wind rattling the shutters, the last guest rolling onto a bed of straw. Beyond the walls, the road stretches onward just as it did for generations of travelers before you, and as it will for those who come after. The medieval inn, with its mix of comfort and risk, of welcome and warning, stands as a gentle reminder. Sometimes, history's greatest stories are simply those of finding a place to rest and to belong.